sessions. Enter to win these and other prizes at WTTW.com/sweepstakes or call 773-509-1111 extension 2 today.
Programming on WTTW is made possible in part by viewers like you and by the following.
It started with a crown, then a bridge, then dentures. But you kept losing teeth and keeping pain. Dental implants are a permanent, custom-made answer to decay and loss. The closest thing to having your real teeth. Eon Clinics keeps the entire process under one roof, with a team that works together to make you feel at home so you can have more to give to the people you love.
Number one value is integrity. Always do the right thing.
We care about people, we want them to be safe, and we want them to know that when they come into the clinic that they're going to be safe doing that.
WTTW programming originates from the Renee Crown Public Media Center.
She was the ultimate agitator and feared because of it.
As racial terror reigned over the South, a young African-American woman struck back with her pen.
There was never a time when Ida B. Wells was not getting pushed back.
Black Lives Matter is addressing the same issues that Ida B. Wells took up in the 1880s and 90s.
Tonight's presentation of Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Mollenhauer Progressive Philanthropic Fund in honor of Ida Mollenhauer, supporting quality journalism.
Good evening and welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. We'll be joined by our Week in Review guests in just a moment, but first, some of today's top stories. A controversial hedge fund will be the sole owner of the Chicago Tribune and its affiliate papers. The board of Tribune Publishing approved a $633 million bid from Alden Global Capital to control the company outright. Alden is now the second biggest newspaper owner in the country and is known for slashing newsroom staff to the bone. The move comes after unsuccessful attempts to find another competing bid to save the paper. Chicago Tribune Guild president and reporter Greg Pratt says the deal portends a dire future for that institution and for a city that relies on its reporting.
It's a sobering, challenging day for the city of Chicago and for the Chicago Tribune. Alden Global Capital taking full ownership of the Tribune is a problem. It's a concern in the long term and in the short term. But in the long term, we're going to do what we always do, which is we're going to put out a damn paper.
A vote on a civilian police oversight board could happen next month. This according to Alderman Chris Taliaferro, who is chair of the council's Public Safety Committee. That committee would have to vote on the ordinance. Mayor Lightfoot has vowed to introduce her own plan for a police oversight board, but is yet to give specifics, and you can read more about this story on our website. And Illinois public health officials report more than 1,500 new COVID cases and 21 additional deaths in the last 24 hours. That makes for a statewide total of 1.373 million cases and 22,556 deaths. And so far, more than 39% of the state's population has been fully vaccinated. And now on to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Maxwell Evans of Block Club Chicago, Tamon Bradley of WGN-TV News, Jim DeRogatis, co-host of the syndicated radio show Sound Opinions, which you can hear on WBEZ, and Dana Kozlov of CBS 2 News. Let's start off tonight with Lori Lightfoot, the mayor. She celebrated her second anniversary in office by touting her accomplishments and acknowledging difficulties. Take a look.
Very different than what I would have anticipated. But in many ways, I wouldn't trade a second of it. It's been hard. It's been tough. There are times when I felt despair.
Let's get something straight. Before pandemic, she came in with so much hope and promise that people believed in something different coming to city government, and she has failed at every turn, most of the time from self-inflicted wounds.
Dana Kozlov, Mayor Lightfoot promised transparency when she campaigned, racial equity, an end to things like aldermanic privilege, police reform. How has she fared? What's her report card on some of these things she campaigned on?
Well, if you listen to the 20-plus groups that had a protest last night near her home, they gave her an F. I think that you have to consider one thing before you issue a grade, or I do, and that is the pandemic. I think that threw a big wrench into so much of what she planned to do or may have planned to do. But I do think, and there are examples of her going back on or simply not living up to things she said she was going to do prior to being elected. And one of those issues is transparency. The police misconduct file database agreement that was reached this week between herself and 2 aldermen would be one example of that. She says she wants transparency about police misconduct, for instance. Well, this agreement would only release those files back to 2000 and only substantiated claims. And that's just one example. We have specific examples of CBS 2, for instance, the Anjanette Young case, where initially City Hall tried to fight the release of the video to us. So I would say there are a lot of extenuating circumstances. It's not like, Mayor Emanuel's second year in office or former Mayor Daley's second year in office. I would say, with all things considered, I'd give her a solid C at this point.
Or an incomplete, because there's still 2 more years on the term, and you're right about the last year. It threw a wrench into things that nobody expected. And the police misconduct database you're talking about, the Inspector General Joe Ferguson said that it didn't go far enough. Tamon Bradley, you also have higher rates of shootings this year over last year and last year over the year before, although this does mirror a trend in big cities across the country. What about her record on public safety?
Paris, she absolutely gets an incomplete grade. It is a record of clashing with various people, various groups, the aldermen, journalists, opponents, very tough, in-your-face style. It's been 2 years marked by controversy, marked by acrimony. Yes, the pandemic is a big piece of this, but there are a couple things that stand out for me because there are several high-profile campaign promises that have not yet been met. The elected school board. She said she supported an elected school board. Now she is backing a hybrid plan, so that's a partially elected school board. And then on police reform, she said she supported public oversight, an independent commission that would have the final say on police policy. She continues to promise us that she'll unveil her plan. The aldermen are ready to move on this because the grassroots have been talking about it for several years now. This week, I asked her about that, and she said, stay tuned, my plan is coming. She's supposed to be an expert on public safety, but violence has increased in Chicago.
Former head of the police board and former Mayor Emanuel's Police Accountability Task Force, so certainly a lot of experience on that issue. Maxwell Evans, those things that Tamon mentioned, changing her stance on the elected school board, to now supporting hybrid school board, changing her stance a bit on police oversight. Do you think those kinds of things would cost her with voters?
What I'm hearing in my neighborhoods, at least, is she's not exactly drawing a whole lot of wholehearted supporters based off of all these flip-flopping on these issues. And so I've heard people are in support of some of her policies and in support of some of her pushes for equity across the city, particularly in business. But yeah, many residents that I speak to on a day-to-day basis are growing kind of frustrated with the wishy-washiness as it relates to these issues.
And also frustrated some aldermen, some that we had last night. Jim DeRogatis, despite this frustration, I mean, she kind of came in antagonistic from the day she was inaugurated, saying, you know, your free ride is over, the pay-to-play is over, aldermanic privilege is over. She has passed 2 budgets by slim margins, but do you see her losing control of City Council and perhaps a majority block of City Council going against what she wants to do?
You know, I wish the city council pushed back more. I mean, to me, I don't cover City Hall as regularly as my colleagues tonight. But, you know, as a citizen and as a voracious news hawk, I'm shocked at how pro-big business she is, just like Daley was, just like Emanuel was. Whether you talk about, you know, way before the pandemic, before she even got into office, you know, she flip-flopped involved in the first week on Lincoln Yards, and now inviting Lollapalooza to do whatever it pleases. The situation down by my in-laws on the east side of Chicago, where let's move the problem out of the north side and bring more pollution to the glorious east side. She seems to roll over to big business every bit as much as her predecessors.
Although if you ask the Chamber of Commerce, they might not be entirely happy with her tenure as well. So critics in different corners here. She also made national news this week when she announced that she was only talking to black and brown journalists on her second anniversary. Take a look.
So one day out of 365, I say that I'm going to mark the anniversary of my 2 years in office by giving exclusive one-on-ones to journalists of color, and the world loses its mind. It's way past time for the City Hall press corps and the people that do the hiring and make the decisions to get the memo.
Tamon Bradley, the reactions are all over the place on this. Some, folks saying it's fair to question the diversity representation of media, but also questioning whether Mayor Lightfoot is the right messenger or the timing here, whether this is a diversionary tactic. What do you see?
So, Paris, there's a great tradition in this country of protests by African Americans, making a lot of noise and shining a spotlight on issues that need to be talked about. NABJ routinely publishes statistics showing the lack of diversity in newsrooms across the country. People barely pay attention. On Wednesday, people were talking about the lack of diversity at City Hall, among the press corps, and in newsrooms in the city of Chicago. So, important topic to discuss, but there's no question that as the mayor was marking 2 years in office, this changed the subject, and it was a different headline rather than what would have been a lot of negative headlines that we just discussed to mark the occasion. Also keep in mind, Paris, that this is a mayor who is thinking about running for re-election, and it is a way to connect with black and brown residents in the city of Chicago. Certainly the chattering class is very upset. City Hall folks are offended by this. But the reality is, I think there are a lot of black and brown people who saw what she did and said, oh, right on. Yeah, that is a problem. I can tell you just from listening to a black radio station Thursday morning, they were talking about what happened, explaining what happened. And then there was a pivot to how Chicago is a segregated city, and they were all riled up. And so I don't think we should miss the fact that it was a substantive conversation to have. There's no question she was trying to change the subject. And I also think, as you know, Paris, she's been feuding with some journalists at City Hall. It was a way to sort of throw an elbow and say, yeah, I'm not talking to you today, and go ahead and be mad about it.
Certainly, and we took exception, as we have with previous mayors, when they want to choose who gets to interview them or which outlets get to interview them. We've had disagreements with other mayors. We had a disagreement with this mayor, and we kind of move on. Dana Kozlow of the Sun-Times editorial noted that had she just given the interviews to some of these reporters, as opposed to sort of make it very public what she was doing, it might have been better. What do you think?
You mean had she just offered these interviews to people of color and just gone ahead with it without making a statement about why?
Well, without making a statement about why, or kind of telegraphing to everybody else exactly, why they were doing this.
Actually, I think that she needed to say something because personally, on Wednesday, so I, am somebody who from Channel 2 who commonly covers City Hall and has for quite some time. And on Wednesday, when I caught wind of these one-on-ones being offered, and it's just, let me say, the mayor can offer one-on-ones to whomever she wants to.
Certainly, and every mayors have done this since the beginning of Chicago.
But it is customary on an occasion like a 2-year anniversary for the mayor, or let's say the head of schools or whatever, to say, I'm offering these one-on-ones to somebody from every television station or somebody from every paper, etc. So when I caught wind that these one-on-ones on Wednesday were being offered to only journalists of color and nobody at my station had been contacted, I thought, well, why is this happening? It doesn't have to be me. And so I reached out to her staff and was sort of put on hold until the next morning. I guess that would have been Wednesday morning. And then that was the response I got was the letter. And then when I said, well, I'd also like to know why some of my black and brown colleagues at CBS 2 were not offered, or they could have been offered these interviews, and I never heard back. you know, I feel like you have to explain it, because then, you know, either or tell me, hey, I'm mad at you, Channel 2, and I don't want to talk to you right now.
And
so
I was just going to say, Dana, it was the same thing here. There was not an interview offered to Chicago Tonight at all to any of my colleagues or myself. But again, it prompted a lot of discussions. Maxwell Evans, she also talked, I mean, her staff had said they also wanted to give hyperlocal outlets an opportunity. Certainly hyperlocal outlets need the access. Did your outlet, Block Club, did they get an interview?
I'm actually not 100% sure on that. I know that I personally did not, nor did I reach out on the day of to try and secure one. So I can't really speak to that. But to your point about the hyperlocal outlets, this city is really special. There are so many reporters of color. There are so many young reporters, those who didn't study journalism and are making a path in the field. I think that there's an issue to be discussed here. There is an issue of diversity in media. Not a whole lot of people who look like me and my friends really in this field. Yet I think that is an issue of access as opposed to makeup. When you look at Chicago, you've got Block Club, you've got the Tribe, you've got all of these nonprofit outlets, the Reader, so many great outlets that are doing good work, that have diverse staffs. And for Lightfoot to wrongly state, for example, that there's no women of color covering City Hall, to me that shows that she's not really paying attention to the true issue, which is there are women of color covering City Hall. There are people of color doing excellent work, covering everything going on in the city as it relates to politics. It's just a matter of they need this year round. They need this more than one day. They need more than a special occasion, and really need that sort of access all the time to properly report on this city.
Certainly a point that a lot of hyperlocal outlets were making. And Jim DeRogatis, this is probably predictable, but the reaction, especially at a certain cable channel, was pretty over the top. I mean, what do you make of how sort of folks around the country took this and kind of fit it into a particular narrative?
You know, the right wing media just blew it up out of proportion. You know, but there was some
a dog here wants to weigh in as well, but go ahead, Jim. I'm going to let you keep the floor.
Not mine.
I'm going to let you keep the floor.
I thought that Tribe interview was extraordinary. I thought they did a fantastic job. They've been doing great work. So has DNA. You know, and you know, hey, of the 3 reporters who cover City Hall for WBEZ, 2 of them are women of color. So I don't know how Mayor Lightfoot missed that.
Can I just say, Paris, and I agree, that Tribe article was fascinating, and I think the mayor was trying to connect with the left, but obviously...
For those that know, I just want to just clarify, the Tribe is a hyperlocal outlet online, but go ahead, Timon.
Yes, and you know, clearly an effort to reach young black and brown residents, and some difficult questions. You know, the mayor certainly came across as pro-police and someone who, you know, maybe isn't the strongest supporter of criminal justice reform. And also, she ended up defending qualified immunity, which may not help her, you know.
Qualified immunity of police officers you're talking about.
Right, which protects police officers acting on the job. But I just would go back to the point that many people were made uncomfortable this week. And sometimes to get change, people have to be made uncomfortable. There's a long history and tradition of that. This mayor chose to do that. Of course, it was political. She's the mayor of the city of Chicago. Everything she does is political, and you can, of course, question the timing. The timing is suspicious, but there's no question that we talked about newsroom diversity.
And we should note that that was a one-day policy, whether folks like it or don't like it. And she did give a press conference yesterday where she called on reporters of all backgrounds. I want to go to another issue this week. Lollapalooza is returning to Grant Park with no capacity limits. Jim, why is it safe for Lollapalooza, but there are other events across the state that don't feel it's quite safe yet?
It's insane. It's not safe. You know, not 40% of Illinois is vaccinated yet, and to allow 100,000 people over 4 days each in Grant Park, it's bending over backwards to please big business, as I said. And it's just, you know, Lollapalooza can't control the fence jumpers. We're supposed to believe they're going to check for vaccines.
Well, also they said Dr. Arwood is on this show saying, Dr. Arwood was on this show saying they will not check for vaccines at the gate. They're going to come up with some electronic way to go about doing that. How do you think that's going to go?
You know, the scientists are still trying to determine how big an impact that Sturgis motorcycle rally had in the midst of the first wave. I don't want Lollapalooza and Limp Bizkit to be responsible for the third wave. You know, or Journey, with not even Steve Perry. Look, this comes against the background of the fact that the clubs that are the lifeblood of this city, jazz and hip hop and rock, for 365 days a year, have been shuttered for 14 months. And the $8 billion bailout by the federal government came months ago, but on day one of opening the portal to help, $2 billion earmarked specifically for small venues of 150 or 250 capacity. The portal crashed on day one. It took a month to get it up again. All the venues have applied for the aid, and they haven't gotten a penny, Paris. We're going to wake up one day and have nothing but Lollapalooza, and the you know, from the green mill to the empty bottle, there's going to be no other musical.
And you've reported this over the years, Jim. I mean, those Lollapalooza contracts, I mean, those bands cannot play these other venues for a certain period of time. Dana Kozlov, what is the mayor's explanation for allowing this to go on, and Riot Fest and Pitchfork, and are you going to be out at any of those events?
Oh, well, first of all, maybe 20 years ago, I'd be out of some of those events. But I shan't. Maybe my daughter will be at one, but we'll have to talk about that. You know, honestly, Paris, I didn't hear the mayor's specific explanation, but one thing I wanted to bring up for why the full capacity, why it's being allowed. But one thing I wanted to add is, you know, there always is a discussion of safety, but also economic. And believe me, Jim, I hear you about the small venues. I'm a huge small music live person. I love it, and I miss them, and I hurt for all of them.
I have to say, I've been out to the Green Mill a couple times, by the way, and I am fully vaccinated. But anyway, go ahead.
So my point, though, is there also is a need to, you know, for an economic rebirth in the city, too. And so there's, in my opinion, I think there's a fine line between trying to bring tax dollars into the city in whatever way you can, and trying to still preserve the integrity of whether it's small music venues or small businesses or whatnot, too. You know, and right now it's such a perilous time economically. So, again, I didn't hear her exact explanation. I'm sorry, but I do think that's probably always a consideration.
Well, Jim, you know, Lollapalooza's had this sweetheart relationship with the former Daley administration. Emanuel was very sympathetic to them. Is there a similar relationship here with the Lightfoot administration? The organizers, the presenters.
I really think the mayor's just being bought by this nonsensical explanation of how much wonderful economic runoff there is for the restaurants and the hotels downtown. There's never been an economic impact study, which is something the independent music community has long called for, because again, 4 days of intense benefit to the high-end hotels downtown versus 365 days a year to the existing music venues. Again, it's just bending over for big business. And I don't think it's, I would not risk, you know, carefully having been masked and avoided COVID for a year to go to any of these festivals. I think it's insane.
All right, Maxwell, I want to get to the issue of General Iron. They're suing the city for $100 million, even though the city is following EPA warnings about the civil rights concerns of that metal shredder moving to the southeast side. Does this lawsuit have a chance to succeed and maybe force the permit?
No, that's exactly what Southside Recycling Reserve Management Group, the parent company which owns General Iron's assets, is pushing to do. They want an operating permit. And they're at odds over these continued delays in this permit review. By the city's own guidelines, a decision was due March 15th, and it was on March 15th that the decision was made to delay. And then again, earlier this month, we heard that there was going to be a delay based off of the EPA's guidance that you referenced. And so, yeah, Mayor Lightfoot has halted the health department's permit review. The EPA has urged the city to further study the impact of another polluter on the southeast side. This would be the 5th scrapper at at 116th and Burley that is owned by Reserve Management Group. There is numerous heavy industrial facilities. There's a dump site for polluted sediment. The area is still recovering from the steel industry's pollution. This is a heavily overburdened site. And so it's kind of difficult at this point with the lawsuit just announced to say which way it could go. I can say a federal judge declined to force the city to deny a permit recently, which recently effectively ended a lawsuit that was claiming the city committed environmental racism by trying to make this happen. And so if that's the precedent we have to go off of, then again, a federal judge did dismiss that. But this is a bit more complex. This is the city and and Southside Recycling now at odds when they were showing up in court for that past lawsuit together and making many of the same claims.
This is certainly going to be a tussle. Taman, I have to turn to another big controversy this week, perhaps the biggest controversy. Your mean Mercedes. 3-0 count. The Sox are up 15-4, and the coaches are telling him, take the pitch, and he swings and hits a home run, and manager Tony La Russa is not too happy about that. So this spurs a debate of, like, do you let the kids play, or do you stand by these old unwritten rules of baseball? Where do you fall here?
So Tony La Russa, who's fabulous, I think it's exciting that a Hall of Fame manager is at the helm of this exciting White Sox team. I think thinks it's 1986. The game has changed, of course. Let the kids play. There's a pitcher on the mound for the Minnesota Twins, but I think what's most troubling
a position player
on the mound for the Minnesota Twins. I mean, they're conceding the game by doing that in the first place. He's throwing a 50-mile-an-hour fastball. Let him swing. I think what's most troubling is that he didn't defend Yermin, sort of threw him under the bus publicly. You just don't do that.
A little bit of discord. Although he said he was afraid of retaliation, and then the Twins did try to retaliate.
And you still don't defend. All he had to say at the press conference afterwards is, "This is what I was afraid of. This is why I told Yermin, don't do this. Respect the game." And then you call out the Twins like, "Shame on you. I apologized. Why would you throw at my guy? If you ever do it again, I'm gonna hit 15 of yours." I don't know what's going on. Wake up, La Russa. But you got a first-place team, buddy.
He's got the best team in baseball, the team with the best record in baseball. We just have a few seconds left. I should talk about the vote for the January 6th commission. 35 Republicans in Congress voted in favor of including Davis and Kinzinger here in Illinois. Does anyone think that it has any chance in the Senate, where Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has said he would oppose it? This is to put an independent commission to investigate what happened January 6th.
We'll see, but it's interesting that Davis and Kinzinger voted for that, potentially people who might run for governor of Illinois, so they need to have some moderate...
Who might not have congressional districts anymore either.
Exactly.
Dana, you wanted to jump in real quick?
Yeah, here's my answer. No, it has no chance.
Because it would need a filibuster-proof majority?
Yes, all of the everything you could think of, including just, I think what we see now is this still ongoing allegiance to the former president. No.
In the GOP. All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time, so our thanks to Maxwell Evans, Taman Bradley, Jim DeRogatis, and Dana Kozlov. Great panel. And that is our show for this Friday night. Don't forget you can get Chicago Tonight and the Week in Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And be sure to join us tomorrow night at 6 for Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, and then 6 p.m. Sunday for Chicago Tonight Black Voices. And then Chicago Tonight is back all week at 7 o'clock. And now for the Week in Review, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and enjoy that summer-like weekend.
Closed captioning for this program is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, pleased to give back to the community through numerous charitable initiatives.
She was the ultimate agitator and feared because of it.
As racial terror reigned over the South, a young African-American woman struck back with her pen.
There was never a time when Ida B. Wells was not getting pushed back.
Black Lives Matter is addressing the same issues that Ida B. Wells took up in the 1880s and 90s.
An iconic institution plans an anniversary celebration.
It's all going to go according to plan, I have no doubt.
But COVID-19 has other plans.
There's a lot of worry in the air.
The 150th, maybe one of the defining years in the history of the museum.
Tonight at 9 on WTTW.